starts to age, there's going to be a lot of demand in that sector. And again, this is an area where I think a marketplace where reputation is measured and payments are handled. So some of these marketplaces don't do payments. I think integrating Work Market, for example, does. I think integrating payments into the platform is a big deal. Like Craigslist doesn't integrate payments in the platform, so you buy tickets from somebody on Craigslist, and you got to go and meet them on a street and hand them, cash, right? And in a labor marketplace where you actually make the payment through the platform, and the platform kind of escrows the payment to ensure that the work is done, it elevates the level of trust in these kinds of things, and I think that's very, very helpful.
Question about SOPA and PIPA. So earlier in the year, they were brought to light, a lot of attention garnered around those, and then after they were tabled, it seemed to sort of died off a little bit, even though a few more pieces of legislation arose around the same or similar topics. Is there anything that you think that the tech community has done or is galvanizing around to ensure that we have a voice against some of the larger, more traditional media companies?
I don't think it's just the media companies. If you look at Airbnb, for example, the hotel industry in New York essentially made Airbnb illegal here in New York City temporarily because they were threatened by the idea that everybody could be a hotel operator by renting out the second bedroom in their home. The Taxi and Limousine Commission here in New York is pretty hostile to Uber because they want to protect the medallion system here in New York, and they don't want, all of a sudden, freelance cab operators running around the city being, essentially hailed off of iPhones. And so I don't think it's just the media industry, trying to use legislation to protect their industry. I think you're going to see this play itself out across every single industry out there, where the legacy model, which is a higher cost model, that isn't as attractive to consumers, we'll see a new entrant come in with a more efficient, more attractive model for consumers, start to take business away, and then they're going to go to the government and say, hey, that should be illegal. So what we're doing at Union Square Ventures is we are talking to our friends in the industry about developing some advocacy groups that can represent the interests of not the fat cat venture capitalists. We don't need any help, but represent the interests of the consumers on the internet and the entrepreneurs who the 1, 2, 3, 4 person team that's just getting started and needs somebody watching out for their interest in government. So and there are a number of other. There's a group out in the Bay Area that's also getting formed. I think you'll start to see the tech sector, the internet sector, whatever you want to call it, start to get more engaged politically to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen, at least without a bright light being shined on the issue, and frankly, that our elected officials understand it. I mean, we had a meeting with in the wake of the PIPA and SOPA thing. We had a meeting with one senator, a bunch of members of the technology community got together just to kind of do a kind of a post-mortem. And we were telling these stories, like the Uber story and the Airbnb story. This is a senator didn't even know about this, right? So, these people are busy. I mean, one minute they got to be worried about our foreign policy in the Middle East, and the next minute they got to be worried about healthcare reform, and the next minute they got to worry about copyright issues. And honestly, like they're not as knowledgeable as you might think about what's going on out there. And this isn't a knock on them, right? It's like, if you try to do that job, you probably wouldn't be as knowledgeable either, right? It's just like you got a lot to, to be up to speed on. And their staff, a lot of these staffers are young and not well paid and working hard, but maybe not as knowledgeable as maybe they could be. And so I think it's our job as citizens and our job as an industry to help change that, to make our our view of the world more well known, and make sure that people see that there's two sides to an issue, and it's not just the established institutions that have got representation in Washington who are telling the story to the elected officials. So I think you'll see more of that.
I'm just wondering if you have any ideas on the contemporary art, marine technology world. We're currently working for a company called InSITE, and there's several companies like that, InSITE, Panel 8, which are trying to bring contemporary art world online. Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah. I'd say I have. I'm not. I don't have a. I'm not confident that my point of view here is correct, but my point of view is that the gallery owners don't really want a truly electronic market for art to develop. The gallery owners control the market for art, and they have a vested interest in that art being sold at the prices that they want it to be sold at, and they want to be the one who develops the artist's career and develops the value of their work. And there's a whole thing that goes on in that world about scarcity and the new show in the gallery is sold out before the show even opens, and it's a rigged game that the gallery owners operate to their benefit and potentially the benefit of the artist, but not the benefit of the collector. And I really am nervous about the internet marketplaces that are developing in the art world, that are developing in partnership with the gallery system, because I don't think that they can really do what needs to be done, which is to disrupt the gallery system. And I think the systems that are coming up from the bottom, which are focusing today on the really, really inexpensive art and the no-name artists, are the ones that are ultimately going to be successful. If you read Clay Christensen, he talks about how the most disruptive systems are the systems that people kind of laugh at in the beginning, that start out as toys or start out at the super low end of the market, but over time they're the ones that will ultimately end up becoming the most successful. And I think that's the answer in the art world as well. I know that that's not the artsy model, but that's my view of how it's going to play out. Again, I'm not as confident about that as I might be in some other sectors, but that's my gut instinct on that.
I'd love to hear your opinion on YouTube's new strategy to create channels. Do you think it could be a viable alternative to cable, and would you ever consider content as an investment? And when I say that, I'm thinking of companies like Machinima or Maker Studios.
I think what YouTube is doing is great. A lot of people laugh at that. The people in the TV business laugh at it because the numbers, the dollars that YouTube is spending relative to what a TV studio would spend on a TV show is pretty tiny. So you hear a lot of people kind of laughing. YouTube's just throwing around play money. It's never going to work. But I think the strategy of let 1,000 flowers bloom and provide some fertilizer to that system. I mean, the problem is that it's been very hard to make high quality content for YouTube until now. And I think YouTube coming along and throwing some money at the problem is a good thing. And I think there will be some pretty compelling content that will get created. Not all of it will be good, but I think plenty of it will be good. At least enough that they will be able to, create some channels on YouTube that people will really actually care about, and potentially, you'll see something emerge out of that that'll be, what people consider must-see content. And so I think all that's good. We don't view it as our firm's expertise to do that kind of funding, and I think that it's smart that YouTube is. And I think that other people who have